I'm glad to hear that it was somewhat invented here because, yes, it was a term I hadn't heard before. But I guess when coming to an event like this and seeing the type of people are here and seeing the types of interests and seeing how interests in the free culture movement and in the educational movement, which is an experience I've never had, seeing those two cultures working together to put an event on. I think it's a recognition. To me, I can't help but ground it too in the changes I'm seeing in digital culture, the implicit assumptions that come into being when more and more media is transmitted digitally as opposed to in physical artifacts, in terms of easy copying, mixing, editing, and then transmission and collaboration in places independent of location. So when I think about expanded education, I guess I think about what are those elements again. So I ground it in a lot of my own ideas of what open education is, which is generally work that is freely shareable, that incorporates work from others. I think reuse is very important to that, just as it is in a lot of remix culture. And then I think too the notion that when you're completed the educational process, that there's an outcome that is somehow a public resource in itself. That's when I think it's most interesting. I have never heard of an event that's oriented like this happening in Canada or the United States. I'm not saying they don't exist, and I intend to be looking. Seeing how the rhythms of this conference work, and seeing the mix of people here, it's made me think that when I get back to Canada, instead of looking to go to educational conferences, I should be looking at media art conferences, perhaps. It should be a group that I should be perhaps reaching out to myself. And perhaps it's got me thinking whether a model like this could work in Canada. I think the closest thing we've come to this, I'm a co-organizer of a conference called Northern Voice, which is a social media conference. So it doesn't have anywhere near the same orientation with art, but at least there it's a conference where education is just one component of a larger kind of social and collaboration kind of message. So we share that some with artists, some with people in the business community, small startups and .com, Web 2.0 companies and things like that, and education kind of working together. And I've been to new media conferences, but I've never seen one with a focus on the public education component like this. And I think it's a fantastic combination. I really hope that this is a model that might perpetuate, because I think it's worth perpetuating. Unfortunately, it's very much the exception. Although the fortunate part is the University of British Columbia is one of the biggest universities in Canada. I think we have 40,000 full-time students or something like that, and thousands of faculty or teachers. So even with a relatively small percentage, we can still have quite a bit of activity. I can keep busy certainly, and I can work with a team that keeps busy. But actually, the challenge that has kind of been put to me by my director is to stop working so much in a one-on-one. Like the way I've always worked is building relationships with people, like the kind of work I showed yesterday, and to grow from that into, I guess, the way it's been phrased to me, a more strategic approach across the institution, and to try to have that attitude adopted at higher levels. It's a very complicated thing because now suddenly, instead of working with professors and students, I'm navigating administrative procedures. I mean, I think the part of the reason why I'm being encouraged to think bigger is there does seem to be a growth in kind of grassroots interest from the faculty. So people are asking things like, why isn't UBC doing what MIT did and making more of its courses available openly? And these are, a couple of years ago, I remember when I would do presentations much like the one I did last night, people were very nice, but it was still kind of like this totally wild idea. Whereas now, people are actually coming to me now and saying, so it's a very exciting change there. Now, how we can begin to diffuse that and set in place the structures to be able to try to have these approaches, really transform practice at a large institution, it's going to require the help of a lot of people across a big university, and we may not always have the same vision in terms of what we want, so we're going to have to learn to work together. And I think it's an exciting time, and I actually am very, very pleased to have the kind of role that I have. I feel very fortunate. It also, though, means a lot of time spent doing things where I really don't. It's hard to get your head around it because it's all so new. I don't feel like I have very many models that I can follow or a process I can follow that's been done before. And I think one of the biggest challenges culturally, it sounds like the same in Spain, certainly where I am, is an acceptance of a certain amount of failure as part of the process. And to say, the first time we do something, things will probably go wrong because we don't have a model and we're going to be trying something new. And the unexpected will happen. And what I tend to find is the unexpected happens the first time you try something. The unexpected is usually an unwelcome surprise. But once you've gone through the process once or twice, then suddenly those unexpected things start to become a lot more enjoyable and they start becoming happy surprises. But again, to have that built into a model is a challenge, and it's a hard sell to do within an administration. And it's a hard thing to say to professors too, change your practice. And you know what, it's not necessarily going to be easy when you start.
What about the students?
It's a good question. I think it really comes down to, it's been a wide variety of reactions. I mean, I think some students, unfortunately, university tuition has gotten very expensive in Canada. I think it's quadrupled in the last 10 years at my institution. And as a result, I think students somewhat reasonably now start to view their experience at university in a much more commodified way. It's like I'm paying for almost a service, and there's almost like a customer mentality. And in those type of environments, it's very hard to suddenly tell people, what, we're going to do less now. We're going to expect more of you. It means more freedom, but it also means more responsibility for you. Sometimes there are objections to that. Generally, the type of people who are there to learn and are motivated, I mean, that you get some really exciting stories out of it too. So in my experience, it's really mixed. And when I teach, when I get evaluated at the end of the year, my evaluations tend to skew low and high. Some of my students say, he didn't give me enough guidance. I was not always clear on expectations and things like that. And then I have students who say things like, I've never had the opportunity to do this kind of work before, and I found it really fun. And it really tends to be very divergent in the approaches. And I don't know. I'd be interested in learning more about how other people are managing those sets of expectations, because I think that's an area I need to improve, not only in my teaching, but also to be able to assist others in making these changes. It's an area I need to know more about. And I'd just like to thank again, this festival has been just an absolutely unparalleled experience for me, and to be amongst people this creative and who are this committed to something so important, it's just been an inspiration to me. I can't thank you enough for the invitation.